All right, and welcome back to Real Conversations. I'm your host, Buzz, and today we have John Gray, who's the creative mind behind the film Exit Package.
Hi,
And
Buzz.
hello. And before we get going here, could you go ahead and give everybody just kind of a brief background about your film history and what all you've done and whatnot?
Well, I'm kind of these kind of come full circle away for me. I started out as a teenager many years ago, making short films, and then I was lucky enough to have and still have, a pretty long career in Hollywood, making feature films and television movies, and more recently television series. And with the pandemic and everything, I've sort of come back to making short films because it's just such a great way to stay creative, while not only riding out the pandemic, which luckily now seems to be winding down, but also as a way to keep busy during the glacially slow process of developing for TV and features. Everything just takes so long, and I find myself not willing to wait, and I just want to get out there and tell my stories. So I've kind of gone back to short films as a way to do that.
Nice. And that's one of the things that you had submitted to the festival was the exit package,
Yes.
which is it's very interesting. I love how it's like, was it done through Zoom, or did you like have everybody set up and just make it appear? Like, how was that process?
No, we actually did it, through Zoom. There were no cameras, no lighting. It was all just recorded, via Zoom. And I wanted to be sure that the actors could, because we made this last May, so it was sort of like the height of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure the actors, could stay safe, and I could tell them, you will never have to leave your home to do this movie. And so, we did it as if it were a Zoom meeting, and there were some moving parts that were a little complicated because we had to have one actor did have to go into another actor's home. And so we held off on casting that role until I cast all the other roles. And we ended up with Kirk Acevedo to play that particular role. And I asked him if he had any friends who were actors that he liked, that he would feel comfortable with having come in his house. And so he turned us on to Tim Griffin, who's a wonderful actor and was a friend of Kirk's. And because of that friendship, Kirk felt comfortable with him having him come to his home, even though we still made sure Kirk was out of the house, when Tim came in. And so it was a little complex in getting things, moving around, but we pulled it off, and we shot it in one day. We did a day of rehearsal, and two of the actors were in LA. Well, three of the actors were in LA. One was in New York, and I was in New York doing it, from Zoom.
Nice. Yeah. That's one of the first things that I noticed when I first started watching it was Kirk. He was in, like, this was one of the first films that I'd seen where I'd recognized somebody. And he was in a TV show that I'd seen, The Arrow.
Yes, right, right.
I was like, oh my goodness, like, that's crazy. So that was a really cool moment. But that's like an incredible process to do, but everything on Zoom, like, that's wild. How was it directing behind, like, not being able to be with the actors? Like, how did that go?
It was frustrating and challenging, but the funny thing is, like, once you kind of fall into the rhythm of it, it's like directing from a booth. Once we got used to it, we did a day of rehearsal before. So once we kind of got used to this whole thing, it was fine. And if I want to send like a private note to an actor, a little piece of direction that was just for one particular actor, I could do it via the chat, feature on Zoom. And so it would just be private between the actor and I. And, there's always that little bit of a delay, so you have to get used to that. But all in all, I think it worked out, really well. And I mean, there's nothing like being in the room in person, but this is certainly the next best thing. And the actors were happy to do it too, because they were bored. They were all stuck at home. And in LA in particular, it was a very difficult time with the pandemic. So, the whole thing was just kind of tailor-made to keep everybody home and safe, and it worked.
Yeah, I thought it definitely worked. And so I've noticed, so there's a movie coming out. I don't know if it is out yet or not, but it's called Profile. And it's
Oh, yeah.
and so I was wondering if you thought, like, since the pandemic and since everybody's gotten used to like video conferences and like video calls like this, if you think that like that type of format to where it's all either appears to be online or is done like yours completely online, if you think that is going to be a more prominent like type of direction of film.
Well, my own opinion is that, I think these things are probably going to fade away a bit now with the pandemic ending. I think that people at first it's like it's a fun novelty, and in my case, my film kind of spoofed the whole Zoom culture that we're in. There's always somebody eating, there's always somebody doesn't have pants on below the can. So we just tried to have fun with that, and people I think enjoy it, for that reason. But I think coming out of this pandemic, people are just kind of sick of Zoom, and sick of virtual meetings. And so I'm not sure there's going to be a long afterlife for these kind of movies once we're back to normal. Because I think they're going to feel too claustrophobic, and people are going to want to just get back to, regular movies. I think,
Uh,
I haven't seen Profile, but I've seen it as I've scrolled through, iTunes and stuff. And, it looks like it's going to be a good movie. And there was another really, really great horror short made through Zoom that was a bunch of young people having a seance. I forgot the name of it, but it was really great. It was so well done. And there'll always be a movie that will poke through because it's so good. But ultimately, I think people are just kind of anxious to get back to normal movies and forget about this, forget about having to be isolated and quarantined.
yeah, I'm sure, definitely. Because I know, like with school and stuff, I'm like, hey, let's just show up in the classroom. Come on.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I like definitely agree. That makes total sense that everybody's going to be, let's just see something else besides the Zoom room.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, but I was also interested in wondering what made you choose the like kind of like the murder mystery like genre. Like if you just thought that would be easiest to convey through mostly just dialogue, or like why did you settle on
Well,
that type of story?
yeah, I want to do something that had a little bit of edge, and that could be funny. And really, the way it came to me was that I was on a Zoom call. It was a meeting, a big meeting. There were like 8 other people on this meeting, and I was bored out of my skull, and it was going on and on and on. And at a certain point, someone in the meeting just got up and walked away. And I thought, oh, that's odd. I wonder if that maybe I had to get some water or something to drink. And then I started thinking, like, well, what would happen if that person never came back? Would anybody notice? Would we think it's, are they okay? And then I kind of took it a step further. Well, what if they were like, we all just heard a gunshot and that person never came back? What then? And so I just started riffing on it from there. Like, what would, why would that be? And so maybe there's this corrupt investment company having a Zoom meeting, and one by one, they're all getting killed and they don't know what to do because they're all isolated from each other. So that's sort of like the genesis of it, just being bored in a Zoom meeting and letting my mind wander, and then one person who got up and then, took them a long time to come back. I don't know why they left. I still don't know why they left. But that's kind of how it started. And I got kind of excited about it and then just started. And I didn't think about it being funny at first, but once I started writing it and thinking about all these kind of Zoom tropes, the food and all that kind of stuff, and how no one quite knows, or at least at the beginning, you weren't quite sure how to behave on a Zoom meeting. Is it as formal as a regular meeting because it's in your home? Is it not? So then I just started having fun and just tried to bring out some comedic elements of it that people will recognize, hopefully from our endless Zoom meetings that we're all doing now.
Yeah, I definitely like the definitely like little comedy bits, like the first guy, he had like baked bean French toast or something. I was like,
Yes.
what gross.
I
And
know.
then Kirk, he was just rocking the flaming underwear,
Right.
just
That was his
boom.
idea, by the way.
That's awesome.
He brought that to the
That's
table.
just shows up with that. Oh, okay. It's
Yeah.
casual
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's like that. you're just hanging out and all of a sudden the idea hits you and you're like, let's see what would happen. And then you made it happen.
Yeah, but I got kind of excited about it because I thought, this would cost no money. Even doing it through SAG, it's a category that SAG considers experimental. So, you don't have to pay anybody very much money. There's no equipment, there's no crew. It's very liberating because, there's no waiting for lighting. We just did it like a play almost, although we did it in separate pieces. But and I have very, very talented editor, Scott Boyd, who is just awesome. And, it was a learning curve for all of us doing something at 30 frames a second. And, it was new to us. But, we just kind of caught up with it. And Scott was able to do a lot of creative things in the way he put images together. And so it was a lot of fun because we learned from it. And like I said, it was just kind of liberating not to be worried about makeup and hair. And, we're going to have to turn around or relight. And, it looks like crap because it's a Zoom meeting. Everyone expects it to look like crap. So we weren't worried about that. And, the one challenge that we had was not everybody's internet connection was, that great. And Kim Wayans, who is just so funny and great, and, we love her. And she, unfortunately, had the worst internet connection of anybody. So she was constantly like freezing and falling out of sync. And we were always having to kind of do things over and try to get a little bit better. But when it was over, I realized that I have the freedom to address that within this Zoom call. So when we finished shooting everything, I held Henry Cherney, who played Brett. I held him back, and we just did some kind of wild lines where he was insulting Kim's internet connection. What is your computer steam powered? That kind of thing. So whenever we had a bad piece of Kim's Zoom call that we couldn't get around, we would then throw in a line from Henry, making fun of it. And that kind of saved it, because people recognize that everyone freezes, everybody does, drops out during these Zoom calls. So we were able to get around that, pretty easily.
And that's awesome because it's just so cool that you can do anything like that. You're like, you took like a murder mystery and you made it essentially making fun of all the things wrong with Zoom, but in actuality, they happened to you and you just went with the flow.
Right.
That's awesome. Exactly. It's like you can't do that on a regular movie set. Everything's got to be perfect and to a T.
Yeah.
So I'm sure.
Yeah. And one thing that we just you can't, no matter how well you plan, you can't really foresee everything. And so on the morning we were ready to shoot, we were logging everybody in, and Henry, who lives in LA, told me, John, he says, I didn't know this was coming, but there's a crew from the city of LA outside my window, and they're chopping down it, they're trimming a tree. And they've got these big, saws, power saws. And it's like, wow, how we could never have anticipated that. And so that held us up a little bit. We had to try to position his computer so the microphone was away from the window, but it all worked out fine.
Well, good. And that's another thing of, hey, when you're at home, you can't control what's going on outside your home.
Exactly.
But yeah, so those are all the questions I have for you. Before we end it, I was just wondering if there's anything else that you wanted to add about your experience with the film or making it or anything else.
All I can say is that I learned a lot from it. And one of the main things I learned was that, there's always a way to be creative and to try to still tell a story, even in the face of a pandemic. And I'm particularly grateful for a film festival like you guys to give us an audience and to allow the work to be seen. Again, I mean, we're coming out of the pandemic now. My last film with you guys was at the height of the pandemic, and I was grateful then too to be able to still find a way to get my films to an audience and hopefully have people enjoy them. So I just want to say thanks to you, and thanks to everybody who watches. Thanks for supporting short film, because it's not always easy to get an audience for short films, and film festivals are really the only way. And by supporting us and turning out to see us, you help us make more. So thanks for that.
There we go. Absolutely. Yeah. And is there any social media or anywhere that they can follow you and like keep up with what you're doing and any like upcoming projects or anything you got going on?
Well, I'm on Twitter. My handle is J Thomas Gray, and it's Gray. And we're about to shoot another short. Actually, we just finished what I hope will be my last pandemic short. We did a film that I directed through Zoom, but we shot on an iPhone. And I was in New York, and the actors were in Vancouver. And it was great fun. That was a little sci-fi piece. And we finished that a few weeks ago. But at the end of July, we're going to do our first on-set live, short film with everybody present. So I'm really looking forward to that because, we all just love being on set and working with each other. So I'm excited about that. And then in August, we're going to Paris to do a short film in Paris, which is a great opportunity. And something just kind of fell in my lap and I grabbed it. So I'll have many more shorts for you next year.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for your time. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you, Buzz. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.